Step away from the door, hands where I can see them.
Hold up, this is my apartment. I live here. What's the problem?
We got a call about a break-in. Hands up now.
A break-in? I'm the resident. Can I show you my ID from my wallet?
No reaching. Hands where I can see them.
How am I supposed to
Get
show
on
you?
the fucking ground, now!
At 7:32 p.m. on a Tuesday evening in Arlington, Virginia, the third-floor hallway of the Clarendon Heights apartment building was quiet except for the sound of keys jingling. Marcus Thompson, 41 years old, stood outside apartment 4, his own apartment where he had lived for the past 4 years, trying to unlock his door after a long day at work. His key stuck in the lock, something that had been happening for weeks. He jiggled it, pulled it out, tried again. The building manager kept promising to fix it, but hadn't gotten around to it yet. Marcus was tired, hungry, and just wanted to get inside, change out of his suit, and have dinner. He didn't know that his elderly neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Patricia Levinson, had seen him struggling with the lock and had called 911 to report what she thought was a break-in. She had moved into the building only 3 weeks ago and didn't know her neighbors yet. She saw a black man in a suit trying to force open a door, and in her mind, that meant criminal activity. What happened in the next 38 minutes would be captured by the building's hallway security cameras and by body cameras worn by 3 Arlington County police officers. It would end 2 law enforcement careers, trigger an internal investigation at the Justice Department, result in a $12.6 million settlement, and prove that even a senior attorney at the Department of Justice wasn't safe from racial profiling in his own apartment building. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, because what unfolds over the next several minutes will leave you absolutely speechless. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this plays out. Marcus Thompson had spent the last 16 years building a distinguished career at the United States Department of Justice. At 41, he was a senior trial attorney in the Civil Rights Division, specializing in police misconduct cases. He investigated and prosecuted law enforcement officers who violated citizens' constitutional rights. He had secured convictions against officers who used excessive force, conducted illegal searches, and engaged in racial profiling. The irony of what was about to happen to him would not be lost on anyone. Born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, Marcus was the son of a postal worker and a nurse. He had excelled academically, earning a full scholarship to Georgetown University, where he graduated magna cum laude with a degree in political science. He then attended Harvard Law School, where he served as an editor of the Harvard Law Review. After law school, Marcus clerked for a federal district judge in D.C., then spent 3 years at a prestigious law firm before joining the Department of Justice. Over 16 years at DOJ, he had tried 47 civil rights cases and won 44 of them. He has secured multi-million-dollar settlements for victims of police brutality. He had testified before Congress on police reform. He was considered one of the nation's leading experts on police accountability. Marcus lived alone in his 1-bedroom apartment in Arlington, a 10-minute metro ride from the DOJ headquarters in Washington. He was a quiet, private person who kept to himself. He worked long hours, often bringing case files home to review in the evenings. His neighbors in the building barely knew him. He was the polite man who held elevator doors and nodded hello in the hallway. That Tuesday had been particularly exhausting. Marcus had been in court all day on a case involving a police department in Ohio that had systematically violated the rights of black residents through aggressive stop and frisk policies. He had delivered his closing arguments and the case had gone to the jury. He left the courthouse at 6:45 p.m., took the metro to Arlington, stopped at a deli to grab a sandwich, and arrived at his building at 7:28 p.m. He took the elevator to the 3rd floor, walked down the hallway to apartment 312, and pulled out his keys. The lock stuck as it had been doing. He jiggled the key, applied pressure, tried to wiggle it loose. He could hear the mechanism catching but not quite turning. Across the hall, Mrs. Patricia Levinson heard the noise. She was 76 years old and had moved into apartment 3 only 3 weeks earlier after her husband passed away. She was still adjusting to living alone, still nervous in her new environment. She looked through her peephole and saw a black man in a dark suit apparently trying to force open the door across from her. Mrs. Levinson didn't think to knock on her door and ask if everything was okay. She didn't think to call the building manager. She immediately called 911. "There's a man breaking into an apartment," she said to the dispatcher, her voice shaking. "He's trying to force the door open. He keeps jiggling the lock. I think he's trying to break in. What's your address, ma'am?" the dispatcher asked. Mrs. Levinson provided the address. It's apartment 4. Please hurry. I'm scared. Can you describe the person you're seeing? He's a black man, maybe 6 feet tall, wearing a dark suit. He's at the door right now. Is he armed? Do you see any weapons? I don't know. I can't tell. Please just send someone quickly. The dispatcher sent the call to Arlington County Police as a possible burglary in progress. 2 officers were dispatched, Officer Ryan Mitchell and Officer Kevin Barnes. Marcus finally got his key to turn. The lock clicked open. He pushed the door, stepped halfway into his apartment, then paused to pick up his mail from the floor just inside the door. He had 1 foot inside his apartment, 1 foot in the hallway, bent down reaching for the mail. That's when Officer Mitchell and Officer Barnes arrived on the 3rd floor. They came up the stairs rather than taking the elevator standard procedure for a burglary call. They wanted the element of surprise. They reached the 3rd floor and saw a black man in a suit bent over, half inside apartment 4. In Mitchell's mind, this confirmed the 911 call. A burglary in progress. A suspect caught in the act. Step away from the door. Hands where I can see him, Mitchell barked, his hand moving to his service weapon. Marcus stood up quickly. Why? Startled by the sudden command, he stepped back into the hallway, his hands automatically raising slightly. He was still holding his keys in one hand, his deli bag in the other. Hold up, this is my apartment. I live here. What's the problem? Marcus said, confusion and concern in his voice. We got a call about a break-in. Hands up, now, Barnes said, also moving his hand to his weapon. Marcus raised his hands higher, still holding the keys and the bag. His mind, trained through 16 years of prosecuting police misconduct, immediately understood what was happening. Racial profiling, assumption based on skin color. An elderly white neighbor who saw a black man and assumed criminal activity. A break-in? I'm the resident. Can I show you my ID from my wallet? Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice calm despite his racing heart. No reaching, hands where I can see them, Mitchell shouted. How am I supposed to show you? Marcus started to ask. Get on the fucking ground, now, Mitchell yelled, drawing his weapon. Marcus froze. He had prosecuted enough cases to know what happened when black men didn't comply immediately with police orders, even illegal ones. He had seen the videos, read the autopsy reports, interviewed the families. He knew the stakes. He lowered himself to his knees, then to his stomach, still holding his keys in one hand. The hallway floor was hard and cold against his chest. His deli sandwich fell from the bag and rolled away. Barnes moved forward and grabbed Marcus's arms, pulling them behind his back. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The metal was tight, uncomfortable. I'm Marcus Thompson, Marcus said again, his face pressed against the hallway carpet. I'm a senior trial attorney at the Department of Justice. I work in the Civil Rights Division. This is my apartment. I have identification in my wallet. I have my lease agreement inside. I can provide references from the building manager. Tell it to the detective, Mitchell said. What crime am I being arrested for? Marcus asked. I haven't broken any laws. I am standing outside my own apartment with a key to my own door. We'll sort this out at the station, Barnes said. Mrs. Levinson's door opened a crack. She peered out, saw the man from across the hall in handcuffs on the floor, and felt vindicated. She had been right to call. He had been trying to break in. The police had caught him. Ma'am, are you the one who called 911? Mitchell asked. Yes, officer. I saw him trying to force that door open. I was so frightened. Do you know who lives in apartment 4? Marcus asked from the floor, his voice calm despite his situation. Mrs. Levinson looked at him with suspicion. I don't know. I just moved in 3 weeks ago. I live in apartment 4, Marcus said. I've lived here for 4 years. The lock sticks. I was trying to get into my own apartment. Mrs. Levinson looked uncertain for the first time. Officer, you can verify this very easily, Marcus continued. Call the building manager. His name is David Rodriguez. His number is on the directory in the lobby. He can confirm I'm the resident of this apartment. Mitchell hesitated. Something about the situation was starting to feel wrong. The man was too calm, too articulate, too specific with his information, and he was wearing a suit and tie, not exactly typical burglar attire. Barnes, call the building manager, Mitchell said. Barnes pulled out his phone and went down to the lobby to find the directory. He called the number for David Rodriguez. Rodriguez answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? This is Officer Barnes with Arlington County Police. I'm at Clarendon Heights Apartments. Can you tell me who lives in apartment 4? 4? That's Marcus Thompson. Nice guy. Works for the government. He's lived there for about 4 years. Is something wrong? Barnes felt his stomach drop. And what does Mr. Thompson look like? Black guy, maybe 6 feet tall, usually wears a suit to work. Why? We'll be in touch. Barnes hung up and returned to the 3rd floor. He pulled Mitchell aside and spoke quietly. The building manager confirms Marcus Thompson lives in apartment 4. Description matches. He works for the government. Mitchell's face went pale. He looked down at Marcus, still handcuffed on the floor. Sir, can you tell us again where you work? I'm a senior trial attorney at the United States Department of Justice, Marcus said. I work in the Civil Rights Division. I prosecute police misconduct cases. I specialize in excessive force and unlawful arrests. And right now, you're committing both. Mitchell and Barnes exchanged a look. They had just handcuffed and arrested a Justice Department attorney in his own apartment building. I'm going to remove the handcuffs, Mitchell said. We need to verify your identity. You should have verified my identity before you handcuffed me, Marcus said. That's called probable cause. You're supposed to have it before you arrest someone. Mitchell unlocked the handcuffs. Marcus stood up slowly, rubbing his wrists. He reached into his jacket pocket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out his wallet. Inside was his driver's license, showing his name and the address of apartment 4, Clarendon Heights. Also inside was his Justice Department identification badge. He held the badge up for both officers to see. The badge clearly identified him as Marcus Thompson, Senior Trial Attorney, Civil Rights Division, U.S., Department of Justice. Barnes looked like he might be sick. I need your names and badge numbers, Marcus said calmly. I'm filing a formal complaint. I'm also reporting this incident to my supervisors at DOJ, and I'm pursuing a civil rights lawsuit for unlawful arrest, excessive force, and false imprisonment. Sir, we were responding to a 911 call, Mitchell began. I understand that, Marcus interrupted. But responding to a call doesn't mean you can arrest someone without probable cause. I was standing at my own door with a key. I identified myself. I offered to show identification. You refused to look at it. You ordered me to the ground and handcuffed me in my own building. You thought a black man in a suit trying to unlock a door must be a criminal, Marcus said, his voice hard. Despite the fact that I had keys. Despite the fact that I was dressed professionally. Despite the fact that I immediately identified myself and offered proof. You made assumptions based on my race, and you violated my constitutional rights. A 3rd officer arrived, Sergeant Linda Martinez, responding as a supervisor after hearing the call about a possible burglary arrest. She took one look at the scene, Marcus in a suit with his Justice Department badge visible, 2 officers looking uncomfortable, Mrs. Levinson peering nervously from her doorway, and immediately understood something had gone wrong. What's the situation here? Martinez asked. Marcus explained what had happened. He showed his identification. He described being ordered to the ground and handcuffed, despite identifying himself and offering to provide proof of residency. Martinez turned to Mitchell and Barnes. Did you verify his identity before detaining him? We were responding to a burglary call, Mitchell said. The caller said someone was breaking into 312. Did you ask him for identification? He offered, but we felt we needed to secure the scene first. He was standing at a door with a key, Martinez said, her voice tight with controlled anger. Did it occur to either of you that he might actually live here? Neither officer responded. Martinez looked at Marcus. Sir, I apologize. This should have been handled differently. We'll be filing a full report on this incident. I'll be filing my own reports, Marcus said, starting with my supervisor at the Civil Rights Division. We prosecute these kinds of violations. I understand, Martinez said quietly. Marcus picked up his keys from the floor, gathered his scattered mail, and his deli sandwich that had rolled down the hallway. He unlocked his apartment door easily this time, the adrenaline apparently helping with the sticky lock, and went inside. He closed the door, set down his things, and sat on his couch. His hands were shaking. He had just experienced exactly what he prosecuted other officers for doing. He had been arrested in his own building, in his own hallway, trying to enter his own apartment. He pulled out his phone and called his supervisor at DOJ, the chief of the Civil Rights Division. We need to talk. Something just happened that you need to know about. The investigation moved swiftly. Marcus filed a formal complaint with Arlington County Police Department. He filed a report with the Justice Department's Office of Professional Responsibility. He contacted the FBI, and he retained a civil rights attorney to file a federal lawsuit. The building's hallway security cameras had captured everything. The footage showed Marcus arriving, struggling with his lock for approximately 3 minutes, finally getting it open, stepping partway inside to pick up his mail. It showed the officers arriving, shouting commands, Marcus complying immediately, being handcuffed and forced to the ground despite identifying himself and offering to show identification. The body camera footage from both officers captured the audio clearly. Marcus asking, "What's the problem?" Offering to show identification from his wallet, being told, "No reaching." Then asking the logical question, "How am I supposed to show you?" before being cut off by Mitchell shouting, "Get on the fucking ground!" The profanity, the escalation, the refusal to let Marcus prove his residency, all documented. But the most damaging evidence was the pattern. This wasn't Mitchell's first incident. Internal Affairs discovered that over his 8-year career with Arlington County Police, Mitchell had been involved in 14 complaints of racial profiling. 7 involved Black residents being questioned or detained in their own neighborhoods, their own buildings, their own homes. One case involved a Black doctor being questioned while entering his own medical office. Another involved a Black professor being detained on his university campus. A third involved a Black businessman being questioned in the parking garage of his own office building. In every case, the residents were engaged in completely lawful activity in places where they belonged. In every case, Mitchell had made assumptions based on race. In every case, the complaints had been dismissed or resulted in minimal discipline. Barnes had a cleaner record, but had partnered with Mitchell for 2 years and had backed him up in multiple questionable detentions. The civil lawsuit named both officers, Sergeant Martinez for supervisory failure and Arlington County. The allegations included false arrest, unlawful detention, violation of Fourth Amendment rights, assault, battery, and infliction of emotional distress. The case went to trial 8 months later. The jury watched the hallway security footage showing Marcus struggling with his lock, clearly not breaking in, but rather dealing with a sticky mechanism. They saw him finally get inside, then being confronted by officers. They heard the body camera audio of him identifying himself and being ordered to the ground anyway. They heard testimony from the building manager confirming Marcus had lived there for 4 years, and the lock had been reported as sticking. They heard from other residents who confirmed seeing Marcus in the building regularly. They heard from Mrs. Levinson, who admitted she had never spoken to Marcus or asked him if he lived there before calling 911. They heard from police training experts who testified that the officers should have allowed Marcus to show identification when he specifically offered to get his ID from his wallet. They heard testimony that Mitchell's use of profanity shouting, "Get on the fucking ground," showed he had lost professional composure and was escalating rather than de-escalating the situation. They heard from constitutional law professors who explained that having a key to a door is evidence of lawful presence, not criminal activity. And they heard from Marcus himself, who described the humiliation of being handcuffed in his own building, in front of his neighbors, by officers who refused to let him prove he lived there. He described asking if he could show his ID from his wallet, a reasonable request, and being told no reaching. He described trying to ask the logical question of how he was supposed to prove his identity if he couldn't reach for his wallet, only to be cut off mid-sentence by an officer screaming profanities and ordering him to the ground. He described the fear of knowing that one wrong move could have ended with him being shot. He described being a Justice Department attorney who prosecutes police misconduct, experiencing that same misconduct firsthand. "I've spent 16 years prosecuting officers who do exactly what was done to me," Marcus testified. "I've seen the videos, read the reports, interviewed the victims. I know what happens when officers make assumptions based on skin color. I know what happens when they refuse to listen to evidence that contradicts their assumptions. I've made it my career to hold those officers accountable." He paused, looking directly at the jury. "I never thought I would become one of those victims. I thought my suit, my credentials, my calm demeanor would protect me. I was wrong. And if it can happen to a Justice Department attorney, it can happen to anyone." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found in Marcus's favor on all counts. The damages awarded were $12.6 million, one of the largest civil rights verdicts in Arlington County history. Officer Mitchell was terminated from the Arlington County Police Department. His law enforcement certification was revoked. He would never work in law enforcement again. Officer Barnes received a 30-day suspension and was required to complete extensive retraining on constitutional rights and implicit bias. He was removed from patrol and assigned to administrative duties. Sergeant Martinez received a written reprimand for failing to properly supervise officers with patterns of complaints. But the consequences extended beyond. individual officers. Arlington County implemented new policies requiring officers to attempt verbal identification and voluntary compliance before using force or making arrests in non-violent situations. Officers responding to burglary calls had to attempt to verify residency before detaining anyone found at the scene. And the department created an early warning system to flag officers with patterns of racial profiling complaints. 2 years after that Tuesday evening, Marcus Thompson stood at a podium at the National Bar Association's annual conference in Washington, D.C. He was addressing a room full of black attorneys and judges. 2 years ago, I was arrested in my own apartment building, Marcus told them. I had a key. I had identification. What? I was wearing a suit and tie. I calmly identified myself as a Justice Department attorney. None of it mattered. The officers saw a black man and assumed criminal. He held up his Justice Department badge. This badge represents 16 years of work prosecuting police misconduct. I've secured justice for dozens of victims. I've held officers accountable for violations of civil rights. And then I became a statistic myself. The room was silent. We like to think that education protects us, that professional credentials protect us, that working for the Justice Department protects us. But it doesn't, because racial profiling doesn't check your resume before it targets you. What does protect us is documentation. Evidence. The security cameras in that hallway captured everything. The body cameras recorded the officer's words. That evidence proved my case. Without it, it would have been my word against theirs. We need to continue fighting for accountability. We need to continue demanding that officers follow the Constitution they swear to uphold. And we need to remember that none of us is immune. Not doctors, not lawyers, not judges, not even Justice Department attorneys who prosecute these cases for a living. The applause was long and emotional. Marcus returned to his work at the Civil Rights Division. He continued prosecuting police misconduct cases with renewed focus and personal understanding. But he also became an advocate for policy changes, body cameras, civilian review boards, early warning systems for officers with patterns of complaints. He still lives in apartment 4 at Clarendon Heights. The building manager finally fixed the sticky lock. Mrs. Levinson apologized to him 6 months after the incident, admitting she had made assumptions without knowing him. They occasionally chat in the hallway now, and she always greets him by name. But every time Marcus comes home from work, every time he unlocks his apartment door, he remembers that Tuesday evening. The shouting, the guns drawn, the cold floor against his face, the handcuffs, the knowledge that being right, having proof, identifying himself, didn't protect him. He keeps his Justice Department badge in his wallet at all times now. Not because he thinks it will prevent another incident, he knows it won't, but as a reminder that the work he does matters. A reminder that accountability, when it finally comes, is worth fighting for. Justice was served. Policies were changed. Officers were held accountable. But the price of demanding that accountability should never have been so high. This case changed police training protocols across Virginia. But if you think this story is shocking, wait until you see what happened to the emergency room doctor who was arrested while treating a patient because the officer thought she was refusing to follow orders. That case is even more insane.